Hi,
Take care.
Keziah. How
Hi.
are you today?
Good. How are you?
Great, great. Thank you so much, actually, for meeting us today and walking us through all the different societies that we have in Canada for collecting money, and also walking us through how our members and how musicians can activate those royalties. So,
Yeah, of course.
um, most of the people in the CDMC, I mean, almost all of us are signed to SOCAN. I mean, it's kind of the only choice, really, as a PRO in Canada. It's not kind of, it is, it is the only choice. We used to have two, though, didn't we?
We used to have two, and then they joined, which ended up making SoCan. Yeah, and that was
KPAC and
years
ProCan.
ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
KPAC and ProCan. So we'll start easy because most people are already signed with SOCAN. What kind of rights does SOCAN administer?
SoCan administers the public performance rights,
Hmm.
and those rights are directly related to any public performance of music. That could be on the radio, that could be through a DSP like Spotify, that could be through YouTube, that could be in a restaurant. So it administers that public performance. And of course, that also includes the performances at concerts and any live music events, down to weddings. If you have a DJ, that's a
Hmm.
public performance. SoCan also administers the reproduction rights.
Hmm.
And earlier on in 2018, 2019, I believe, SoCan bought Sodrak, which was representing reproduction rights, very much in the visual art space, but of course, trickles into music, and they are broadening their catalog in that way.
Yeah, and is that what's referred to as SOCAN RR?
Yes, correct.
And that's only been for how long? Since they amalgamated?
Since 2000, and it could actually be 2018, between 2018 2019.
Yeah, it's fairly recent.
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, is there any last time we talked, you mentioned some things about like set lists and that you should pay the license fee. Well, first of all, talk about that. And are there any other little kind of tricks with SOCAN that a lot of us are probably not utilizing?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's not so much of a trick. It's more that you are benefited if you do things correctly. And so if you are putting on a show, or you are touring and you are self-promoting this experience that you're taking places, then you therefore are the promoter. And promoters are required to pay license fees. It's either the promoter pays or the venue who pays, but somebody needs to pay this license fee.
Mm.
And that license fee is a fee that is attributed to the intellectual property of the composition or of the work.
Mm.
If a lot of times there are people who are self-promoting and touring, and they don't want to pay the license fee knowing that they have written all of this music. But what SoCan's doing is they're taking that license fee, and if you've written all that music, you're actually getting back the license fee and more for your intellectual property. So the license fee could be an amount of, let's say, $30 for a show.
Mm.
But then the royalty, after calculations and knowing that all this intellectual property is in fact yours, could be $60, which therefore means that yes, you are paying in, but you are also receiving on the back end.
Mm.
If you don't pay in, you wouldn't receive anything on the back end because there would be no license fee to distribute.
Yeah, and I know this exact case because I know people who they do submit their playlists and then they're asked to pay this license fee, and then they just say, forget it. Why should I pay?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in reality, it actually works in your benefit, and you make money if you
Yeah.
pay the license fee correctly, and
Mm.
then you end up receiving the license fee plus a little bit more because there's a pool that money comes out of.
Right. So in other words, if all the repertoire is your own, you pay the license fee, you're definitely going to make a profit.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you could be devil's advocate and say, well, what if I'm singing all covers? Well, then in that case, you still need to do things correctly because you are now singing intellectual property that is not your own.
Mm.
So as an artist, you would appreciate if somebody else was singing your song that you would receive the royalties. Well, we need to pass that forward and make sure that we continue that honest ecosystem, which helps to fuel the music industry itself.
Right, right. And would you say that going forward, I mean, we're 2021 now. My feeling is that all these things that used to be completely neglected are not going to be things that we can miss anymore, because just technology, it can pick up, it can police things much better than before.
You can, and they're continually working on the technological advances of works
Yeah.
and how everything can be integrated onto one system. I mean, currently there are a number of systems that are documenting works around the world. And if that can be built into one, someone call it blockchain. If there was a blockchain that was able to identify your work in Tokyo, which would move over to England, which would move over to Canada, then it would allow for the money to travel a lot
Right.
easier.
Right, right. Okay, so just to review, SOCAN now is not just SOCAN. Now it's also SOCAN-RR, which is since
It is all under the SOCAN umbrella.
and also this INTANDEM company, which is
Yes.
like a joint venture with Resound, correct?
You're right. Yep. So there's SOCAN, the SOCAN group owns SOCAN-RR, which is reproductive rights, performing rights, so the PRO, and that therefore means that SOCAN is actually an MRO, a music rights organization, because they're covering more than one right. And then the newest entity of SOCAN and Resound is this joint venture that they created, and it's called INTANDEM. And INTANDEM is essentially the licensing departments of Resound and SOCAN combined into one space. This benefits the creator absolutely, because what was happening prior to that joint venture was business owners, not knowing and not in the industry of music, were paying a license fee. I mean, they have many licenses to pay, liquor license, all of these licenses. So they were paying potentially SOCAN, or they were paying Resound. But they were often not paying both of them. But both are required under the copyright law, and both serve two different groups of people. One being the creators, and the others being oftentimes the studio musicians, right?
Mhm.
And so what INTANDEM is an amalgamation of the two. It is taking Resound's group of members and SOCAN's group of members and supporting both of them by invoicing businesses both licensing fees.
Yes, and I remember before SOCAN used to do this job itself, and again, Resound did it, and it was very annoying for restaurants and bars and whatever. And I mean, I know a person in a restaurant who just flatly refused, right? He just, yeah,
Sometimes.
and so, but by amalgamating the two, it just streamlines the whole system.
It streamlines it, and they still operate as two separate companies, but INTANDEM itself collects for both, and then
Right.
INTANDEM will send the money due to Resound, and the money due to SOCAN.
Right. And so the INTANDEM is what you call general licensing? Is that
Yes,
the term?
it'd be general and concert licensing.
Oh, in concert too. Okay,
In
so
concert. Yeah, the only area where INTANDEM is not yet licensing, or those licensing departments have not fallen under INTANDEM's umbrella, is the DSPs. So anything that is Spotify, anything online media, online radio, all of those are done outside of INTANDEM.
right, right. But you said like even public parks, even like I mean it's probably the reach is going to get wider and wider from what I can understand.
I mean, it has been that way for a long time. Where you will see development of licenses is probably on the technology side, but buskers and buskering in parks, that has been around for a long time.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a license for you have to always think of it as any place where you can hear music, there is somebody's intellectual property that is at use. Therefore, a license fee is required so that we can make sure that those who actually created the music that you're loving
Mm.
is being paid.
Yeah, CBC had a program, I mean, again, years ago, and how about how hard it was for SOCAN to enforce this. But in our last conversation, you sort of made reference that it's sort of more formal now. Like in terms of the way they deal with all the different restaurants and
Yes.
bars.
Yep.
And
There's
all
a
the,
process. Yep.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yep. There's a process. It's a streamlined process. You have people who are in business development that go to new organizations, new restaurants, new places of business,
yeah,
and reach out to them, whether that be a place of brick and mortar place of business, or whether that be an online place of business, right? You have Twitch, that's a place of business. You have YouTube, that's a place of business. All
yeah,
of these places are using music. So yes, there is a business development team. And then once that business development team has secured, informed and educated, and then secured the documentation to license this place of business, that place of business goes into a system that is very efficient,
yeah.
operationally efficient. They pay on either a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, or a yearly basis, depending on the license.
Mm,
And then that money, like I said, is transferred over to SOCAN or Resound, where they move forward in in distributing that to their members.
right. And so again, so it's more enforceable now.
Yes.
And but also in terms of like the actual tracking of which songs are which, you mentioned there's some sort of beacon system.
There is, and that comes from Nielsen. So there are different ways. If we're looking at radio, Nielsen BDS is the one who typically has the beacons in different areas and can use satellite and technology to pick up music that is played in a particular area, and we call that a survey. And the survey is done at a given time, and that survey is done frequently enough to know what is playing where, and that helps to distribute accurately, or more accurately, the royalties, right?
Mhm.
There are other ways that we receive documentation, or we being SOCAN receive documentation, and that comes from reporting, data reporting. So some of those large conglomerates will send in their data because they have it, let's say it's online, they have a huge list of data as to what's been played throughout a month. And then SOCAN and Resound will go and filter through, make sure that it's accurate, make sure it's identifiable. Sometimes there's misspellings in the metadata, as you know,
Yeah,
which becomes a huge
often.
issue. And so connecting those, making sure it's the same song, the right song, and then paying to the creators.
Yeah, you mentioned BDS, Nielsen BDS. So is it important that we register all our songs with Nielsen, or not
No, you
really?
don't have to register your songs. In registering your songs with SOCAN, they would, and the metadata that goes through releasing a song, right? They would have all of that data from the radio stations also.
Okay, so it's not necessary to reach out to
No,
BDS.
no.
Okay, well, that's good. One less thing to do.
Well, yeah, don't worry about it.
And in the States, there's a thing called Grace Note. Do you know what that is?
I don't know Grace Note. No.
It's a database too. Like
Okay.
it's just one of the things they recommend you do. You send your thing to All Music, which of course is a database,
Mhm.
Discog, and also Grace Note. But Grace Note seems like it is something like Nielsen.
Okay.
I'll have to research it, but
I mean,
uh,
Nielsen is definitely a huge company, and they are focused on data. So,
right.
music is only one department that they
Yeah.
have, but they're picking it up. They have tracking devices, they can have identifying devices that they can really stream that through. And again, sometimes it's just about getting through the metadata, and that is, we as creators and artists need to always make sure is accurate.
Okay. So just to review, if I sign with SOCAN, they're going to do my performance royalties. That's going to be taken care of, radio, television broadcast. They're also going to, the SOCAN RR is kind of a separate sign up though.
It is
But
a little bit of a separate sign up,
yeah,
yes.
but anyway, it's within the same umbrella, and
Yep.
that'll take care of mechanical royalties.
Mhm.
And then INTANDEM is going to be taking care of this general licensing, again, restaurants, blah, 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 and also like your concerts, So
Mhm.
the set list, and I guess do you submit your set list to SOCAN or you submit them to Intandem?
You would still go through SOCAN or Resound, however you're submitting. You submit what we call an NLMP, which is a notification of live performance.
Right.
And once that's submitted in the member portal at SOCAN, the money that comes from licensing is then matched with the set list that you've provided, so that once that match happens, money can be distributed.
Right. Right. Okay. And the great thing again is that you don't have to do anything special with Intandem on either the
No,
the Resound or the SOCAN side.
no.
It's
The
just
only thing that you need to do within Tandem is if you are self-promoting an event, a show, a concert, or tour, if you're doing any of that and you are the promoter, even if you're bringing on others to be part of this event, you need to get a license.
oh, right. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's great. Okay. So now we're going to go into the world of neighboring rights, which
Yes.
is very scary for most people and very perplexing. So in the United States, well, okay, forget about the United States. Let's just talk about Canada. So in Canada, we have Resound, which is the umbrella company, and then we have Actarax, MROC, Connect Music, and then in Quebec we have Soprac and Artisty.
Mhm.
So my first question, even before what we even talk about what neighboring rights is why are there so many neighboring rights companies affiliates in Canada?
That is a question that I asked once I
Yeah.
came in contact with Resound, and it is because these were a group of partners that collectively wanted to um, represent their members
Mm,
and use an umbrella Resound to collect the license fees. But
mm,
each individual partner has a specific membership and benefits that they give to their membership.
mm,
And so Resound is all of them coming together saying, we need to collect money in one central location. But if you are with MROC or Actarax, then your member benefits may be different. Where the money coming from, though, is coming from Resound as an umbrella. And then Resound takes that and distributes it to its to its partners.
yes. And just a quick review. Actarax is associated with the Actors Union, ACTRA.
Mhm.
MROC, I don't know if it is anymore, but I think originally it was associated with the Musicians Union.
Okay.
And Artisty in Quebec definitely is part of Union des Artistes, which is the same thing as ACTRA, but in
Mhm.
Quebec. And then Connect used to be AVLA, and
Okay.
it's
Yes, I
because I
remember
was
that.
with AVLA for a while,
Yes,
and
I
then they
remember
changed.
that too.
And so both Connect and Soprac, they collect for the master side of the royalty, whereas the other ones collect for the session player side, or you know,
Yes. And so that's why it's really important to have all these partners, because depending on where you fall within that,
hmm,
you would choose your partner accordingly.
right, right. So in my case, because I own my own masters and I'm also the artist and the recording artist, I'm a member of both Connect Music and
Mhm.
Acrobax. Yeah. So, but I could just be a member only of Resound, right? I could
You
just,
could,
yeah.
yes, you definitely can sign direct to Resound. In
Hmm.
one article I read, it actually was encouraging their members to sign direct to Resound.
Hmm.
Um, and that was just, being able to streamline. It was an actual article that came out, and I don't remember which partner had specified, but it was for the benefit, of course, of the artist.
Right.
Or yeah.
And just but you mentioned that Resound has no artist benefits at all.
No, they are standalone. I mean, that may develop in years to come. But
Hmm.
when I say that, I mean they don't have an artist and repertoire team. They don't have an A&R team. Whereas
Right.
at SoCan, there is an A&R team, totally different rights altogether.
Hmm.
But SoCan actively is building teams to look for new songwriters and producers,
Mm.
and Resound, yeah, maybe developing that. But I think, the difference there is that SoCan is SoCan and that's one of one, whereas Resound doesn't want to step into that because you have other partners who are providing these benefits. So it wouldn't be, it would probably wouldn't be as kosher if they came along and said, okay, well, we're going to now provide all these benefits, because now that takes the members out of the partners that they
Right.
have worked with for years.
Right. Right. Okay. Now let's go to the next stage and actually describe or explain what are neighboring rights.
Neighboring rights. So neighboring rights are the rights that are for your record labels, your performing artists, and your studio musicians. It is where you are not the part of the creative process of that song. You could be playing on the song. You could be the one who is the front man of the song, actually releasing the song. But SoCan represents the performing rights, and that means they're representing the creators and producers.
Well,
Or
the composers, right? The
composers, producers, creators. Yeah.
Yeah.
We say creators typically because it encompasses all. So that's your songwriter, that's your producer, that's your composer. Anybody who is part of, their intellectual property is used in the creation of a work. And that's where that right is. Neighboring rights is beside. So it's neighboring the creators by supporting that song. And that support could be the artist that's releasing it. If I take
So like in the case of Whitney
Rihanna.
Houston, yeah, exactly. In case of Rihanna or Whitney Houston, where they don't actually write the songs,
Yes.
that's where they get their pay.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so them, or the background musicians, all are taken care of on the neighboring right side.
Yes, yes. And on the other side, you have it broken down. They're the people who played on the album, like the lead singer, the band. And then on the other side, you have either the record label or the master rights holder.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
Right.
which is oftentimes the label. But if you own your own masters, which I always encourage people to look into doing when they can, or to retain their master rights all the time, then the neighboring right would be 50% for that performer, and then 50% if you're the performer and the master holder, then 100%.
Yeah, yeah. So it's always best to have both.
Absolutely. We've heard of like Paul McCartney, for instance, who buys back all of his masters. I think Jay-Z did it too. There's a lot of artists that realize how much money is being left to the labels because they own the masters.
Yeah. And by the way, neighboring rights is relatively new, 1997 in Canada, at least.
In 1997 is when Resound was created. But I wouldn't say that neighboring rights was new, because others could have been collecting, because the partner societies would have been in existence, I think. I'd have to
I
look
just
into
mean in Canada. In Canada, we didn't collect. And in the United States, they still don't collect, except for
well, it's not that they don't collect, they don't distribute. So a lot of times they're collecting, but it's not being distributed because there isn't a stream to distribute. So that money is held. And now we're looking at like the MLC, there's $2 billion approximately of unclaimed royalties in the US. But yeah, neighboring rights oftentimes is charged for, or people are paying for, but it's not paid out.
Yeah. And as a session player myself, like I play on a lot of people's albums, and a lot of our members are like that as well. Neighboring rights, I mean, it doesn't, I mean, it's an important thing. And if you play on a hit, it can be substantial money. But it's a lot less than what the performer right is.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's, so when I'm looking at rates, for instance, that's a good comparison as to the amount of worth that they put towards this component, whether it be the neighboring right side or the performing right side. And so the license fee is a good indication of that. License fees typically for performing rights are double that of for neighboring rights.
Right.
So that gives you a good starting point. And then, of course, it has to filter through their systems to spit out a royalty. But at least you know if you are paying $100 for a license fee from SOCAN, you're paying $50 from Resound, which gives you like double or half of the amount that you'll receive in a royalty.
Mm.
At
But
least.
in any case, it's what the musicians are entitled to, so they
Oh
should
yes,
still.
of course. Then the splits between about then the splits beyond that, of course.
Yeah, but there's no downside to it, really.
I mean,
And
if it's 1 cent, 5 cents, or $5, it's still 1 cent, 5 cents, or $5.
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, I think it's not always. My perspective is to look at the right way of doing things, because if you get into the thought process of it not being worth it because it's a little bit, and then you forget to do it when it could be a lot, then you've lost out. So
Mm.
if we look at the right way of whether it be licensing or managing your royalties, and that could be just making sure that you're keeping track of everything, then you would have gotten into the habit of managing your rights. And when you're managing them correctly, that will result in, like I said, it could be 5 cents. But if you do a really big song and then you haven't gotten into the habit of managing your royalties or uploading your NLMPs, your set lists, then a big song comes along, 2 years passes, you look back and you say, oh yeah, I forgot I had a hit like 2 years ago. And then SOCAN or Resound can say, sorry, we don't have that money anymore. It's been distributed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so there is a time frame for which you can collect upon, because in SOCAN's case, I can speak more about because I was there a little bit longer, but
Mm-hmm.
in SOCAN's case, it's a non-for-profit. So as a non-for-profit, we can't have this money just sitting here. And we also need to make sure that we distribute the money to our members. And so if 5 years goes by and you haven't submitted your NLMP or you haven't registered your song and it was a worldwide hit, there could be the case of you not getting as much as you should have,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
zero
Well,
altogether.
actually, you brought up a great point. It's just about setting up a kind of discipline,
It
just
is.
like cleaning your house. Like you sweep your floor every 3 days or something, and
Exactly.
you just get into the habit of doing it. Whereas a lot of us just completely neglect it. And I think I mentioned to you last time, I'm with ACTRA, and sometimes they'll actually call me and say, well, they haven't called me
Yes.
recently, but before they would call me and say, hey, Ron, I think you know this musician because you played on their album. Can you get them to call us because we have some money for
We have
them?
money for them.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Now,
And they still wouldn't call them. They still would not be interested.
and that is, therein lies the problem. When we work in the music industry as a creator, we're looking at streams of income,
Yeah.
and streams of income should be all your auxiliary streams of income along with your main stream of income. And if your main stream of income is being a session player or a touring musician, then that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be collecting the royalties, or at least, like you said, following a discipline and making a habit of it, because who knows when you'll need it. And I've seen that throughout the pandemic. A number of session musicians and touring musicians that I know have reached out to me asking for assistance in getting their back end straight, so to speak, because hey, I played on this song and I haven't registered it, and I am now looking for some cash flow because I'm not touring.
Well, yeah, and definitely because of the pandemic, people are very, very interested in all these issues now, and of course, we're talking about discoverability in our particular project, and of course, streaming royalties, etc., and increasing streams. So yeah, people are very, very interested in now because again, they're not touring, they're not booking shows, and of course, I mean, it's funny when I look at my email and I look at some shows that I booked. I mean, often it's like 100 emails between you and the promoter. Like it's a lot of work. But now we're at home and we have time to actually look at and analyze some of this stuff. So
Yeah.
so that's what we're doing. Okay, now, okay, so we have all these options in terms of neighboring rights in Canada. We can sign with Resound, or we can go to these other different affiliates. Do you know any of the benefits of some of the other affiliates?
No, I don't know most of the benefits. And usually what I do, because the benefits are so specific to each person's individual needs, I encourage everybody to go and check out the partners. That's the best way to do it, rather than me thinking of benefits, and benefits may be across all of them or maybe only at one, but it's almost like when you're choosing insurance. You want to make sure the insurance is going to cover your car or your house. And so you need to look into it for yourself, rather than someone saying, hey, well, just go with this company. And then you go with them and they don't have what you need. So I really encourage anybody who is looking at the partners to go and take a look and see, make sure.
Yeah, and they all have really good websites. And I find that anytime you call any of these societies, they're always very friendly. And it's very easy to get the answers you need. Well, I mean, one thing I can say a little bit is, just because I've been researching this just last week, is that, for instance, with ACTRA, they work with PPL in the UK, whereas Resound doesn't. They don't work with that. So they work with a bunch of others, but you can actually look at each one and you can kind of say, okay, this one has more partners internationally.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way. If that's, again, we're looking at money coming in, but sometimes people are looking at resources. Are there artist resources for me? Are they going to be able to broaden my network? With SOCAN, there are reciprocal agreements around the world. And that is very attractive to the creators, because as much as we talk about SOCAN being the only performing rights organization in Canada, you definitely have the opportunity of signing up with someone who's not in Canada, like ASCAP and BMI. But oftentimes, once that's done, people realize they may not have the same reciprocal agreements. All your catalog is either with ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC, or the fact that all three of them will take an administration fee for money coming in, whereas SOCAN takes 0% administration fee for any international money. So if you're a large artist and your performing rights organization is in Canada, but much of your money is made outside of Canada, even in the US, there's no administration fee that's being paid.
What's the administration fee for money they collect in Canada?
It depends on, it truly does depend on the success of the artist, but it usually is between 9 and 10%, which is still lower than ASCAP BMI, which last I checked was around like between 13 and 16.
Right. Okay.
And in Ghana, I can tell you it's 30%. So I was floored when I saw that. I said 30%. Your administrative fee is 30%. That's just unheard of. There goes HST.
Yeah. Well, even though we pay 30% for a lot of other things.
Yes.
Okay. Now, how important are ISRC codes? This is a question I get asked a lot.
Well, if you want to be able to track your work, you need an ISRC code.
Yeah.
It is, your ISRC code, your ISWC code gives a barcode to your work, which allows it to be more easily tracked. And when we talk about technological advancements, technology requires some sort of number that's going to track you around the world. And so if you don't have that, then it can't be matched and therefore it can't be paid out.
Yeah. And I'm a big advocate of actually getting your IRC code at Connect Music and having your own unique code. Because once you have your unique code, you can apply it to any future releases. Just basically make up the code rather than get it from a CD Baby or something else like that. Because there's some songs I have literally have 3 different IRC codes because I was licensed to a
Yeah.
company overseas,
Mhm.
and I aggregated it through CD Baby. They threw their own thing on, which I didn't ask them to do. I gave
Mhm.
them my own, but when you input the metadata, they're the ones that put it all together in the
Yeah.
end. And they
Mhm.
just threw on their own.
Yeah.
So it hasn't really been a problem so far, but I think going forward, you don't want to have your identification code attached to these other companies.
Yeah. You really, the best thing to do is to have one. I mean, in some cases you will end up with more. But keeping track of them is really important.
It is.
You
It
know,
is.
if you have more than one, it's about keeping track of it. It is an international code. So you really want to make sure that it is on correctly put on all your metadata so
Mhm.
that again the stream can stream easier and you're not looking for money from another time or another release, and then you're having to chase that down and really put a lot of stress on yourself.
Yeah.
But the nice thing, I believe that most societies have this, is you can raise a case. And when raising a case or a dispute, you can say, hey, I released this song, I haven't seen any royalties from it, can you explain why? And then they can go through with you the paperwork to make
Yeah.
sure everything is aligned, to make sure everything is correct, and then you may find a pot of gold at the end.
Yeah. But you can also see why artists are not always that keen to sign up, because they have to get the RSC codes. They have to do this whole kind of mystical thing with
Yeah.
sign up to another thing, create another password, and then have to create an Excel sheet to put up all their stuff.
Yes.
So
Yep. And
it-
I can appreciate that. Those of us who work on the business side, I'm a very left brain and right brain person. So although I am a creator and classically trained musician for years,
Yeah.
I also am very process based. I
Yes.
understand the need for that process, but it is difficult for people who don't have any intent to or want or enjoyment that comes from looking at an Excel document.
Yeah.
But the reality is that this is the music business, and we've all gotten into this business for our love of music because we want to create, but we also want to be able to put food on our tables. We also want to be able to be um, financially responsible and picking up money that is truly ours. It's like doing your taxes. Nobody ever wants to do their taxes. But if I'm going to get money back on my taxes, I'll do my taxes.
Yeah. Well, I kind of, in the guide, I'm sort of saying it's about as hard as booking, let's say, a complicated holiday on Expedia. Like, one where you, let's say, flying to
Mhm.
one place and then you also have to fly to another place, another place.
Yeah.
It's really no harder than that.
No, it isn't that it's difficult. It's that, like you said, it's that
But
people don't.
booking a holiday is fun.
It's true. Yeah, that is true. But it's a few things. It's the discipline. It's not that it's difficult, but it really is that once you get into the discipline of doing it and in the habit of doing it, it doesn't become as much of a task because you've already done all of that legwork. And so now we're adding just one more line, which includes your most recent release. The
Mm.
first time, especially if you haven't done it before, is a little bit more, um, it's a little bit more difficult and intensive because you're really thinking about all the songs you've released. You're thinking about who's released those songs. If you were, there's a many different components, fishing information, getting IPIs and ISRCs.
Yeah.
But as you do it frequently, then it becomes less work. It's like,
Yes, it becomes less work. It's like anything. There's a learning curve to it, but
exactly.
all the things are relatively simple. It's just, I think, like, especially with neighboring rights, conceptually, it's kind of hard for people to understand.
Yeah.
And it's basically, if you look at it, rights are broken up in 4 ways. There's the composer, the publisher, the master rights holder, and the artist, like the singer who is not really a contributor to the actual songwriting.
Yeah. Mhm.
And if you just sort of think of it like that, there's these 4 pieces,
Mhm.
then it kind of makes sense. And I mean, I've seen some, like, I was looking at Manitoba Music, they actually explained it quite well. Like, they took the example of American Woman by the
Mhm.
Guess Who.
Mhm.
And so they recorded it themselves. So they're getting the neighboring rights. The record company is getting the neighboring rights for the label side. They're getting the performance royalties as being composers, and the publisher is somebody else.
Exactly.
Lenny Kravitz records the same song. They still get the publishing rights, like for writing the song, and the publisher gets the rights. However, the neighboring rights go to Lenny Kravitz
Because of the
and
recording.
his label.
Exactly.
So yeah. I mean, once you go through a few of them,
Mhm.
people can kind of understand. But I just feel that the terminology is unfortunate. It should be called like session player rights or recorder
Mm.
rights or something else. I mean,
I don't know the history of why it's called neighboring. I presume it's because it's right beside. That was the thinking, neighboring rights.
well, yeah, that is the
Yeah.
reason. They say
Okay,
because it neighbors the other right.
Exactly.
But I don't know. We tend to think of our neighbors in a subdivision, like downtown or in our apartments. I don't know. What I like about the idea of neighboring rights, the terminology, is that it kind of works in tandem with the other right. Like if this
Yes.
song starts to create a lot of money here, this
Mhm.
is also going to go up. So
Yes.
in a way, it kind of neighbors the curve of the right as well,
Yes.
or of
Yes. It
the
does.
revenue.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, we're doing pretty good. We
We
got
are.
through neighboring rights. We're still standing.
Mhm.
Now, we're one more company to talk to, and that's CMRRA. So can you tell us what this society does?
CMRRA is they administer the mechanical right. So we kind of talked about this before because SOCAN is administering a mechanical right also, but CMRRA is a longstanding company that oversees the mechanical rights. They are focusing on the master rights holders, and they are working to make sure that you are compensated for the ownership of the masters and the mechanicals.
Oh, so it's okay. So it's more from the master rights holders from the label side.
Well, it would be also, if there's it kind of breaks down in a similar way, but mechanicals, if you think about it, can include any download or a reproduction of the original recording.
Okay.
So that would also include sync, which I didn't mention with SOCAN before, but synchronization rights.
Okay. So basically, CMRRA is in direct competition with SOCAN-RR.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay. So, and is there any, I mean, the CMRRA doesn't collect any neighboring rights?
Nope, they don't collect neighboring rights. Really, what they're collecting on, they license, number one. They
Mhm.
license, and when they license, it's the exact same process as Resound and the partners, SOCAN. They all license, they're all receiving money, and then they now need to distribute that money. So administering the right for them is about going and getting the licenses for the reproduction of songs, reproduction of CDs or vinyls or any physical product. But then that also means the reproduction of songs for distribution, which include permanent downloads, which oftentimes people don't realize, because when you download a song, that is a copy of the original recording.
Mhm.
It also includes online on-demand streaming and webcasting, and then you're looking at the broadcast mechanical license, so songs by radio and satellite,
Mm.
and private copy, and then audiovisual and synchronization.
Right, right. So if somebody wanted to do a cover of a song, I mean, we're always told to go to Harry Fox, but you could actually go to CMRRA as well.
Yeah, I mean, Harry Fox is in the U.S.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know it's in the US, but often,
Yes, we have a Canadian.
yeah, so you can just go to CMRRA and clear the rights there.
Yeah, that's where you would want to go first. If you don't know directly the publisher, then you would want to go to CMRRA.
And does SOCAN-RR do that job as well?
They would be reaching out to the publisher. At SOCAN, publishers are also members of SOCAN's membership. And so that's kind of where that conversation makes sense, because they are in line with the publishers, or they are already supporting the publishers. So being able to offer mechanical rights by going to the publishers is an easy conversation.
Right.
Easier.
Right.
But yeah,
Okay.
most of the time it is the music copyright holders and the music publishers that are really focused on CMRRA.
Right. Right. Okay.
They're their clients.
Okay. So we've covered the Canadian ecosystem, which is quite a bit. It's already 10
Yeah.
companies.
Yep.
Now, okay, so I'm an artist, like many of your clients. We make our own music, we record our own music. I've already signed up to all these people here, the ones I've made my decisions. Again, with neighboring rights, it's a bit of you have several options, so you have to choose, right? But anyway, I made all my choices. Now, what else am I missing? Because we still have to sign up with SoundExchange, correct?
You can sign up with SoundExchange, but well, you tell me what's been your experience with SoundExchange.
SoundExchange is great. I mean, it's again, and one of those completely no-brainer things. It doesn't conflict with anything.
Nope.
And it's only collecting royalties from online radio. I mean, it considers things like Pandora online radio as well, but basically stuff that is not on demand.
Yes. Anything that is in a digital space. Yes.
Yeah. Anything's in a digital space. The only thing I would warn Canadians is make sure you get your WBN form in place, because I didn't have that in place, and my first royalties were quite large because, again, it was accumulated for over years.
Yeah.
And I had to pay 30. There's that 30%. Had to pay 30% withholding tax, and wasn't really interested in getting an IRS account and stuff. So, but you can argue with them all you want, but all they want is the WBN form. You give them that, they're happy, and then that solves that problem.
Yep.
So that's all I would say with that. And
that's that is a relatively easy form to find and to fill out. It's not.
Yeah. I got an accountant to do it, but it wasn't expensive. It was like $100. So it's nothing. It's nothing to get excited about. But again, I know a lot of people who never bother, and they just get the tax deducted. So especially if, again, you're making regular royalties. Like I always say to people, like, if you're making decent money with SoCan, definitely sign up with SoundExchange. You know, because
well, I mean, what you want to do is you want to turn over every stone, and unfortunately the world of rights is very convoluted. It can be a lot of mental brain space that you have to house into what goes where and why, but it's that auxiliary income that is that works for you while you're not working. And one person had said to me, if you own a business, the best feeling of owning a business is to make money while you're sleeping. Well, think of your music career and your music, the lifespan of your involvement within the music industry as that business, because it is. While you're sleeping and your song is playing in 3 different other time zones that are not your own, money is being deposited to your bank account, and that's important. Especially when you hit a pandemic. And I think it's become so real for people now that we're in a pandemic that the ability to play live is not there, though that means the work opportunities are not there, and therefore you rely on what is your administration of all of those rights and royalties that you're collecting.
Yeah, and also now streaming makes up 80 or 90% of all revenue from recorded music. So you have the two things working at once. You have the pandemic, and also you have the fact that already streaming was going that way, and now with the pandemic, of course,
absolutely, exactly,
listening to
leaving money on the table, and you are yet your money's growing, and you're leaving it on the table. Yeah.
Now, again, the MLC is another thing, and it's brand new. It only started in January, and that's actually how we both met. We met on the MLC panel, or the MLC workshop. So the MLC, again, is another thing that I think I don't see any downside to signing up for it. And what royalties are they capturing?
they are actually trying to distribute all of its mechanicals, but
Yeah,
they're really trying to distribute that $2 billion of
right,
unclaimed royalties. They're really hacking through that at the current
right,
moment. Yeah,
right.
and it's brand new. But that's what their mandate is really to drive that down, correct metadata, make sure that the money is getting to the right people,
Mm.
because like I said, it is a large number, a lot of money that is there, and it's just unclaimed royalties. Oftentimes, probably because the metadata has a letter wrong.
Yeah, and again, the people haven't registered anything.
But I mean, at $2 billion, you would think that many people have registered, and it's
Oh
just
yeah, well, I mean,
human error.
it's going
Yeah,
to, yeah, yeah. So, well, I mean, it's something that we're really looking forward to because it was a sort of a missing piece,
yeah, it was
and it's only really collecting mechanical. It's called it MLC stands for mechanical license,
mechanical licensing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but it's only really collecting for like online, is it not?
sounded like it. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's what I know of it. Online, again, a lot of times money also gets caught up if coming from the DSPs and is not necessarily distributed in the
mm,
right way. So they're going to be looking into that, where money is going from Spotify and Pandora and Amazon Music, etc.
yeah, yeah. Okay. So, well, thanks so much for all that. And actually, I just want to maybe you can just talk a little bit about yourself. Normally, I do that at the beginning, but wanted to
So we went right in.
do
It's okay.
the hard stuff first
Yeah.
and do the fun stuff at the end.
Mhm.
So I know you're a classical musician. You play the piano. I think you have an ARCT. I think you do.
I do, and I play the flute and violin, and I sing. That's not what I do now, though. I did that growing up, which kind of gave me a background of music, of course.
Mhm.
Growing up in a very musical family, it was so advantageous. But then I focused in my post-secondary degrees, I focused on business and marketing, and that's really where I was able to mélange the two. And when I put the two together, I had my passion of music and my understanding of the art form and being an artist on its own, while also understanding business process operations. And so I started my career within the music industry in publishing. Sorry, not publishing, in publicity, and then from publicity and marketing, I moved into label operations at Universal. Once I was at Universal for about 5 years, and I was doing label operations for a sub label that they had, which allowed me to be very on the ground, connected to every single part of the business, which was really great for learning. I then moved over into licensing, and I was working for SOCAN. I worked for SOCAN for about 6 years, and there I led initiatives that allowed for SoundCloud and to be licensed. It allowed for Apple Music to be licensed, Spotify, a number of other organizations that were coming through online and really using music, right? Anything that comes on through the web that uses music requires a license. And so that could include the NBA and the NFL, or, WrestleMania. So I was licensing all of these different platforms for the use of music, and then the opportunity to license for the new ones coming out, like Twitch. I then left the licensing department, feeling that I had a good handle on what licensing looked like, and was leading the A&R team as their operations lead, which turned into manager of A&R at SOCAN. And then the last little bit, I was at INTANDEM, which is the joint venture between SOCAN and Resound, for just under a year. And then I was most recently, as of March 1st, given the role of executive director of Advance, which is the collective of Black music industry professionals focusing on the upliftment, betterment, and retainment of Black talent behind the curtains, behind the artists, the support roles within Canada.
Thanks so much, because like I said, it's been great to have this information coming from an insider like yourself. And you're also probably the youngest person that we've ever interviewed so far. So anyway, it's just been very refreshing and very informative to talk with you. And again, stay in touch, and thanks again.
Will do. Thank you so much for having me.